Hi, welcome to our webinar. The topic today is closed loop automation. So what that means is connecting islands of automation together across the entire process lifecycle with the goal of achieving optimal business outcomes. So looking at the end-to-end business process holistically, and providing automation throughout that entire life cycle. So that's what we're going to talk about in this webinar. The agenda really quick. We talk about why islands of automation arise and what you can do to connect them together. What does it mean to have closed loop automation? What are the functionality that you need, and how does that work for a company? And then we are going to show it to you, right? So, we're going to have a lot more show than tell, so you can see exactly how things work in the real world. And then we'll talk a little bit more as we come back and end up with real world use cases and business outcomes that closed loop automation delivers. Okay. So intelligent automation has been the #1 priority for most businesses over the last 3 to 5 years. And it will continue to be even more important as we go forward, right? So because of the current COVID situation and remote working, automation becomes even more important, and most companies have to adopt some form of intelligent automation in their business as just part of doing normal business. Okay, so despite this much interest in intelligent automation, unfortunately, the results so far are mixed, right? So companies don't feel like they're getting the right outcomes. They don't feel like they're getting value for their money. They don't feel like automation is delivering the ROI that they expected. So why is that? So the most important thing I see that prevents real ROI coming in from intelligent automation is that automation tends to get fragmented into islands which are disconnected from each other. And because you have these shrunk islands of automation, you can't keep up with maintenance and you're not getting the ROI that you think you should. And therefore the whole process dies out. And then it becomes too difficult to keep it going and get the ROI across multiple years, right? So why do these islands arise? So these islands can arise because of many reasons, right? They can arise on departmental boundaries. For example, let's say the HR department builds some automation. It's very likely that that automation can also be used in finance or across other functions of the company, but no one is looking at it from that perspective. So you don't broaden the use cases for automation that was built by one particular department across the other departments of the company. So that's one part. The other is people, right? So let's say somebody builds a piece of automation to make their life easier. So, I like citizen developers, more power to them. Let people build automation themselves without requiring technical knowledge. But when you do that and you don't share that automation with other people that have similar roles, you are limiting the use case and the value of that particular automation that you build, right? So it's important to know what people have built and how that can be shared broadly across the organization among similar roles, right? And then last but not least, right, I think people also separate automation by function in terms of, okay, I build automation for testing my business processes. Well, that same automation can be used in production, right? It's no different. And anyway, if I build production automation, I need to test it, right? So why have two separate departments, right? One for test automation and one for RPA, and then keeping them, totally separate from each other. Logically, those things should be connected, right? And then that the test automation and the RPA themselves need to be connected to your processes and your process understanding, which comes from process intelligence. So why would you have three separate organizations responsible for something that is one thing and covers your entire process lifecycle, right? So these are some of the reasons why islands of automation arise, and it's very difficult then to sustain them and to get the right amount of investment going holistically, and then getting the right benefits from that holistic investment across your major business processes and across that entire end-to-end process lifecycle. Okay. Now, the other thing that is occurring, right, which taking this to the next level is there is the convergence between enterprise applications, digital processes, and intelligent automation, where the boundaries are blurring. And what's happening here is the focus now is squarely on the digital process. So your process is what actually gives you the business outcomes. That is what actually delivers value. So it doesn't matter whether the process is based on an enterprise application or it uses automation that you have built or both. It has to be holistic. It has to flow seamlessly across. And instead of focusing on individual enterprise applications or islands of automation, it's really important to focus on the entire digital process. And whether parts of it are run through automation, parts of it are run through enterprise applications, part of it's a manual, it doesn't matter. At the end, that digital process has to deliver the right business outcome and has to ensure that your audience, right, your customers, your partners, your suppliers, your employees, when they interact with you, they get the right end user experience, right? So the digital process is key when it comes to intelligent automation. And looking at it from that angle is the only way to ensure that you don't end up with islands of automation. Okay, so how do we look at it? So the way we look at it, right, is that if you have closed loop automation that connects across the entire life cycle of the business process, it has to do three things, right? The first thing it has to do is it has to help you understand your business process. So you can use technology to do that. So instead of manually documenting processes or talking to people, you can get software to help you understand how you're running those processes. And there are various ways to do that. You can use process mining, you can use task mining, you can use business process capture. So there are ways to use technology to get a holistic understanding of your business process. That's part one, because without that understanding, you really can't build good automation, right? So first, understand the process. The next part is you want to make sure that the processes are working all the time, just working as you design them to work. So there is this de-risk element, right, which comes from testing. So you have to make sure that as your applications are changing, as your business rules are changing, as you're modifying processes, that they're still functional. They're still functional across all their variations, across all your geographies, across all your different types, whatever matters to your business. So that's the de-risk part. And then finally, when you do deploy those processes in production, you need to make sure that they're optimized, right? And the optimization is not a one-time thing, it's a continuous optimization. And that optimization can come through automation, RPA, it could come through some low-code development, it could also come through just changing the processes based on knowledge that you gain from the intelligence, right? So three things, right? Understand, de-risk, optimize. Okay, so if you do that, then you're covering the whole process life cycle, and then automation is something that gives you value, and then you invest more in it, you build more automation, and it kind of feeds into a virtuous cycle of benefits as you go forward. Okay, so once again, right, if you drill down into the three key components that I talked about, the first one is process discovery, which can come from task mining, process capture, it can come from process mining, right? And it can also generate documentation of your business processes for you automatically, right? Once you do that, you can then feed the automation directly into test automation, which makes sure that the automation and the processes are working as you design them. And then once you've done that, you can take parts of that test automation and use that in production for RPA to actually eliminate manual tasks, right? Or to construct more intelligent ways of optimizing your business processes through automation. And then all of the information that you gain from building the automation and running the automation, you can feed back into process discovery, right? Through process intelligence. So the idea here is that you're constantly measuring ROI. You're saying, okay, I built some automation. What did I get from it? How much money did I save? Did I improve my end user experience? So there's a number of things you're doing and measuring on a continuous basis that tells you whether you're succeeding or not. And that way, you can then be transparent about how your investments are being made and so on, right? And the other thing that you can do is you can prioritize the optimization, the automation based on where you can add the most value, right? So once you understand the processes and you know which parts run more frequently or which are the most expensive or which parts are the most valuable to you, then you can prioritize the automation based on those parts first and then go down below that and so on. So therefore you have a roadmap for how you would design and run automation, okay? All right, with that, let's go see it so you can get an idea of how this thing works in real life, and then we'll come back and take it from there. So my colleague, Chris Boda, is actually going to do the demo now of the whole end-to-end closed loop automation.
So our connective automation platform story begins with the process intelligence dashboard we're looking at here. For this demo, I'm going to tell the tale of an organization whose journey is just getting started with the connective automation platform, but it's important to realize that it doesn't matter how they begin or where they're at along their process improvement journey when they begin. The platform is flexible enough to provide value at any stage of process improvement. So here at the top of the dashboard, we're first going to talk about potential savings. Our demo organization here has uploaded a couple of process mining files and a couple of process capture files for a couple of their business processes to get started, and they can now see an achievable overall system goal if they were to make efficiencies across process optimization, business process testing, and connective RPA. They begin by looking at process optimization, which is analyzing their as-is production processes, a combination of the system events picked up by the process mining data and the human tasks recorded through process capture. Along with the cost and frequency of that combined as-is process data, this allows our process intelligence dashboard to project a target of making their production processes 3% more efficient. When they look at their business process testing module, they see a potential figure based on a goal of automating those current manual activities and manual business processes. You already know there's a huge time savings there for automating testing activities and a huge ROI if that testing is being done by business users. Within Connective RPA, they get a target for what if they were to build bots for 5% of their uploaded production processes. Now, as they make improvements, they'll also be able to track their realized gains overall, gains per each process area, and also by department on the right side of the screen. But right now they're wondering, where do I start? How do they start putting this in motion to make some realized gains? This is where the dashboard can help. If they're looking to make process improvements, they can open up the top targets for optimization and get system suggested places to start. Which business processes have the most complexity? Order to cash here looks pretty complex with a ton of variance. There might be some low-hanging fruit there. Which business processes are burning the most clock outside of the primary flow? And then which business processes are just simply taking the longest time to complete? They can then also look at automation top targets. This can be used to jumpstart their automation efforts, seeing which manual activities carry the greatest ROI for some quick automation wins. Now, since the system pointed towards the order to cash business process as a good place to check out, let's say they start their analysis there. They start with the most frequent flow from start to end, and then peer into some of the process complexity with their current order to cash area. By analyzing frequency and also duration, they can quickly surface some areas for investigation. By highlighting data by source, they can see which activities came from process mining system level activities, activities where they need to go and capture those human steps. And they can also see which activities are automation ready, where they've already captured the human steps, like we see here with create sales order. To record these human steps, they've used our capture tool to let a user provide the steps for create sales order and then saved it into process intelligence. It's a straightforward experience for a user to start capture, do what they would do normally in an application, and save those recorded steps for a quick path to automation. So let's take a look at how this works in capture. Capture is a super light tool that can be directly installed on any user's machine. And while it has some advanced features and is doing some very advanced things, the user experience from install through recording and capture is very straightforward. Here, We're going to watch a user that has started recording a capture by clicking the big red record button and then is performing their normal application activities for one of the system targeted activities for automation. In this case, creating an order. As the user fills out the order form, we see capture over on the right logging each step, recording which text box and dropdown is being used, as well as grabbing what data is being entered. A small screen capture is also being taken for each step interaction, which we can see below each numbered step on the right. Capture is doing this automatically. The user doesn't have to watch capture, but we're showing them running side by side because it looks cool. Good for cool demo purposes. The business user, all they have to do is hit record, go through their normal business activity, and then save their capture. And the intent here is to provide capture to the ones that know the business processes. And as a result, we can leverage this capture data for process analysis and to automatically generate documentation and automation. We've made it very easy for this reason, and have even provided the ability for them to correct a mistake if they make one without having to start over. If they want to insert a comment for any reason, they can do so easily by selecting the comment icon. These comments will carry through for any auto-generated documentation and will be available in the automation as well. If there's a visual validation that they're doing, something that doesn't involve entering data or clicking a button, they can include that validation step as part of the recorded process through Capture's Live Touch capability. That validation step, which we see here in red, will also be included in the documentation and automation flow. Now, I'm just scratching the surface of Capture's capabilities here, but the basic concept to take away is that we're grabbing those human steps that we can leverage across the platform for performance analysis, for documentation, and for automation. And this brings us back to where we paused our story in process intelligence. They were looking into processes for optimization and automation opportunities. By highlighting data by source, they were seeing which activities were automation ready, like create sales order. When they focus on that activity flow, the data within the capture file also gives them the ability to auto-generate brandable documentation populated with the steps that were captured. The documentation lays out a process flow on the first page for the activities within the capture, and then goes step by step through the process, using the screenshots that we captured along the way to automatically build a document that can be used for retraining if they feel that maybe some of this excess order to cash complexity came from some process knowledge deficiencies. They can also speed along their automation efforts by generating an automation file from that capture file and uploading it to Certify. Now that they've brought their file into Certify, they can see it in automated form. They can see the steps that were captured, and the narratives from the steps from the capture are now showing here in Certify. It's not quite ready to run yet, so they need to enhance it a bit. As an example of what they would need to add to this test is a launch process. So they can search and add that process to the front of this test easily and make it log in as anyone that they need to. Additional drag and drop of automation makes it easy here to create true end-to-end automation testing within Certify. Now that they've finished creating the test in Certify, they head over to the Continuous Testing Manager to schedule the test. The Continuous Testing Manager, or CTM, can run their automation at any time, at any scale in the background. So let's watch some automation in motion and check out how this looks as part of the Connective Automation platform. Here they've got an order-to-cash suite of tests that can be run on any schedule. Remember, these started out as system-suggested areas for automation. The human steps were recorded by Capture. The tests were built from those Capture files. And now we're looking at this suite of tests in CTM where they can manage this suite. They can establish whether the tests within this suite run in parallel and control more granular information about how these things should run. When it comes to running them, they can set a schedule, a repetitive schedule on any testing cycle that they need to accommodate. And just as important, they can run on demand. For example, something that would be triggered from the DevOps realm as part of a CI/CD pipeline. They can keep this suite private, or they can make it available to their team. They can also control who would be notified in case there are any problems along the way. They have the ability to manage and control these tests as needed. They can even spy on them as they run. So here we're going to go watch a test run happen in the background. Let's launch it out here. Right. Now, I wouldn't be leveraging my own machine here. I'm just spying on a test. And as you can see, it's going through the user steps. The same steps that would normally be done by their humans are now being done much faster through automation. And they can run these tests in parallel, running more, running 50 or 100, running as many as they need to keep their overall test times low and test runs tighter. The last thing to cover here is that we're currently running 2 tests in parallel. So we've flipped over to spy on another machine. And this type of spying capability is possible across all the parallel tests that are running. So let's go back now to process intelligence and check in to see how our demo customer is doing. Now, they started their journey by uploading some process mining data and capture data, getting some system suggestions on where to begin optimizing their processes, and suggestions on which activities to automate to support those production processes. Now, at this point, they haven't done a second round of process mining and are probably still implementing their first round of production process order to cash improvements, investigating and hopefully solving some of the reasons for delays between activities and educating out some edge case variants. So no realized savings yet to report here, and that's okay. It's a faster route to build automation to support complex business processes than it is to solve the complexity of production processes. And here we can see that they have built an initial chunk of test automation, which includes some tests around their order to cash process, and they are seeing some realized gains. If we go and we look at their current order to cash process, we can immediately see they've automated a couple of their high frequency activities. And there's our friend create sales order in blue. If we go back to their dashboard now, something you might have noticed is that the potential numbers all grew. And this is reflective of how we expect the connective automation platform to be utilized. Even if they're only looking to gain insights from process mining data, capture data, or certify data, there's no reason to wait and upload all the data. Too many organizations are still waiting to process all the data, then analyze and create action plans for all the data, then wait until the next round of data comes along to see how they're doing. We want to encourage the uploading of a little data, getting started, and while more data is being uploaded, the system suggestions can help surgically guide them to high ROI actions. So now that they've created some automation and certified tests have started rolling in, they can start looking at a business process map of manual cost and manual coverage. Order to cash is still a high manual cost and mostly being done manually, so they'll want to keep targeting that process with more automation rather than the lower cost and less manual procure to pay. It's also time for them to start looking at RPA, start identifying some high value ROI targets, and in this case, the targets look a lot like the manual activities we just automated. So now they're going to be building RPA bots in production based on their now seasoned order to cash automated tests. So let's shift over to RPA and Orchestrator. Here again is their order to cash process. Started as some process mining data that was uploaded, with the system identified as a good target for automation. Those human steps were captured. Automation was built on those captured human steps. And now here it is, their order to cash process waiting for them where they can go into the project and start reviewing the workflow. Now, I'm going to take a moment to talk about security here. All the things around our production RPA solution are at a different level of asset control. As they go through here, everything is highly secure, isolated, and being tracked for review, including the RPA results, which are now captured and securely contained for the purpose of review. From the Create RPA project step, the owner can control the governance. From the very beginning of an RPA project, they can control who is in charge and who is able to see and do what within the system. The discovery of the model is where they can pull in the assets like the create sales order capture file that was performed earlier, as well as the automation assets that are ultimately generated. These things are being put together in order to form the full order to cash process. The RPA model is the automation itself. This is where their bot can have access to the seasoned automation flow that they created within Certify. The last gate before production process approval. Now that we see, notice we have the execute now here. This lets them do a last sanity check in development before publishing into production, because once it's published to production, they can no longer make any changes to it. All models, all data, and everything associated with the project is encrypted and immutable, giving them high confidence when they have a compliance or audit situation. And when they do need to make changes to a production process, they won't have to start from scratch. They can clone the current process and make the needed adjustments before publishing the new version to production and archiving the old version. The one last part to review here is the audit trail that we're looking at now. Here's where everything is being logged and tracked. In the audit log, they can see every action taken with regards to a project, what went in, the approvals, the publication, and more. They can even see when someone spied on the production process like we did with CTM. This ensures governance and auditability and allows them to maintain compliance with the relevant compliance frameworks. Now that they have RPA running as well, let's go back one last time here and see how the connective automation platform has really gotten this customer moving. They've done another process mining scan and are starting to see realized savings across their production processes. The system suggested business processes really helped facilitate a quick turnaround there. We're seeing even more automation gains than before as they continue to let the automation top targets drive the roadmap they're building for automation. And they're seeing gains from their initial RPA production bots they have running. They've also uploaded more data, setting up the next round of system suggestions and continued growth. And as they continue to work on optimizing their production processes, they're continuing to build automation to support and protect those production processes. And they're continuing to leverage the integrity from their automated tests to safeguard their RPA bots in the same way the automated tests are supporting their humans. All of these different ways to solve the problem or process can work together as one approach, providing guidance, coverage, and ultimately a better and faster ROI. One last thing to cover here after the demo. So I just want to go through some of the things that you saw, right? And how all of this fits into one connected automation platform. So one of the things that we looked at was process capture. We looked through the process capture tool and we worked through process mining, right? How both of those are working as part of the connected automation platform. We also saw the continuous testing and certify, the continuous testing manager. One thing that we didn't cover was impact analysis, where we can monitor changes of development going back in and monitor that as well. We also covered what's coming through as part of connective RPA. And then one of the big things about the connective automation platform that kind of makes it so useful of doing all these things as part of kind of one place is that we can take items and we can leverage them for different things across the whole platform, like we see here with Capture. We can use it for documentation. Capture can feed automated tests. It can also feed RPA. And then the kind of the one thing that was kind of bringing our story together, providing guidance and being able to an overview of everything that was happening, the progress, the ROI, was taking all this data and then feeding it back into process intelligence. And so this gives us the complete view, our complete connective automation platform that allows us to get that closed loop automation to where everything is helping everything else to ultimately create a better process. And with that, I will hand it back over to Shoaib.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm going to wrap up now and talk about, again, back to the real world on some key things to look at when you consider an automation solution. Right? The first one is what we call day zero value. So a good automation solution should actually provide value in a matter of days, right? Not weeks or months or years, right? So it's got to be able to give you value quickly so that you can incrementally build automation. And as you get value, you build more and so on, right? So you have that snowball effect of critical mass automation as you go along. So it's very key to get a solution that installs quickly, that doesn't require technical training, and actually can give you already built automation in a matter of days, right? So that's important as one part. The other is this whole concept of resilient automation, right? So your automation should be resilient to changes in your underlying applications or your underlying business processes. And it's important to have that because it's easy to build automation one time, but it's very difficult to keep it going, right? Because your applications are changing all the time, your business processes are changing all the time. So any automation that is good has to be able to deal with those changes in an effective way. And the way we do it here at Worksoft is that we have this patented object action framework that's actually looking for changes all the time and is adapting to those changes as they occur. So we have a model of the application that we build and store in a repository. Each time we run the automation, we look at changes to the model, and if there are any, we relearn the objects and then we update the definitions, right? So that gets you self-healing automation. And we do the same thing for processes, right? So if you have a process that has slightly different steps than it had before, we recognize automatically that those are the same processes, and we are then able to cluster them together and say, hey, these processes are the same. And therefore, if you want to update the automation with the new version of how you do things, that can occur automatically, right? So this is important, right? For long-term value, automation has to heal itself. It has to understand applications. It has to understand changes. And it has to be structured in a way that is not script-based, right? It's model-based. It works well, and then it lasts you for years. Okay, so those are two really important key aspects of the core automation. The rest of the functionality is good, but if you don't have good core automation, it's not going to be of any use to you. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about was some use cases, right? So three of them that I think are illustrative of different ways to do this, right? So with applied materials, right, this concept of breaking down silos, right? So there, what they did was, they were using automation for testing, and they're able to repurpose that same automation for RPA. So what they did was they have a single organization that is responsible both for test automation as well as for RPA. Of course, they may have multiple solutions, but a single organization is responsible, and therefore it drives maximum reuse, right? So this going from test automation to RPA and getting maximum benefits, is a good example. Applied material is a good example of that, right? With Accenture, right, again, the same thing, right? Test automation is being reused for month-end close processes. And month-end close is something that occurs every month. It's tedious, time-consuming, manual. And therefore, it didn't take them long to build out that automation. And then every time they ran it, every month they ran it, they saved, almost 1,000, 1,200 hours, which gave them tremendous savings. And then they can take those savings and then utilize them to build more automation and so on. And then the third one with Cardinal Health, right? This was more about config ops, right? So how do you use RPA throughout your process lifecycle to do certain things like set up systems or set up plans within SAP or configure things or load data? So a lot of the day-to-day things that you do to run your applications themselves can be automated through what's called config ops, right? So automating configurations and data loading and setups and things like that, which is a different use case, a more IT-focused use case, but nevertheless, it gives you a lot of value, right? So there are three different customers with three different use cases, but all of them achieving really, solid outcomes in terms of efficiencies, cost savings, and also speeding up, their delivery, right, on a day-to-day basis and providing that better end user experience for their customers. So those are things that are happening, with real customers in the real world that bring, some of the things that we have highlighted to life. And then here's some more, benefits overall over a larger customer base, right? So we have hundreds of customers that have actually implemented intelligent automation. And again, the idea there is to improve ROI, right? Reduce manual effort 5 times, get a 590% return on investment. And all of these things, right, we can actually document with numbers, right? So we can actually have third-party audits that are done amongst these customers, and they were able to validate and verify that these customers are receiving these savings, reducing risks, delivering better customer outcomes. and those things can be measured specifically. Therefore, you know whether your investment has yielded the actual results that you were expecting. And it's important to do that because that's how you get budget for the next year. That's how you expand your automation footprint, and that's how you get value over several years, which our customers get on a daily basis. Okay. And then I can end with just a little bit about Worksoft. So Worksoft, a company that's been in the intelligent automation space for almost 2 decades now. And then during this period, we've had the good fortune to work with the global 5,000 customers that are sophisticated, global, that have built serious amounts of automation for testing, for RPA. They've done process discovery and automated documentation. So the whole idea here is that all of that knowledge and experience that we have gathered over the last 20 years working with these sophisticated customers, we've put into our product. And then the platform has evolved in this 4th or 5th generation now that includes process intelligence, test automation, and RPA. And we cover all the major enterprise applications, including SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, Workday, ServiceNow, as well as literally hundreds of custom applications. So your entire enterprise application landscape is covered, and therefore your business process end-to-end is covered by Worksoft automation. And of course, you can see quotes here from Forrester and Gartner that acknowledge us in the process intelligence realm as well as the test automation realm, and then also acknowledge us as the clear leader for doing large-scale automation for package applications.